Hello and welcome to Roguecast, the official podcast of Rogues Gallery Comics and Games in Round Rock, where we talk about games, comics, and other stuff on our pop cultural radar. I'm Randy.
Nick.
And this is Dave.
And this time out, we're going to open up with games. We're going to talk about a board game or a card game called Smash Up that is from AEG. I'm the only one who's had a chance to play this game. I had a chance
to play
it at a game night one of our customers ran. And it's a really fun. It's called a shuffle building game. It's like the deck building games like Dominion and all those.
It's giant monsters, right?
It's a variety of different characters. It's that's King of Tokyo you're thinking of.
Oh, you're right.
Smash Up is Smash Up is a game where you have a set of cards. You'll be two factions, and the factions include things like ninjas, wizards, aliens, dinosaurs.
It is a mashup of pop cultural
stuff.
stuff.
Of pop cultural stuff, and you're trying to use these characters. You put minions down each turn to try and take these bases, and when you take the base, you get a certain number of points, and whoever's there with you can get a certain number of points. There's like 3 levels of points you can get from taking a base.
And would you be like vampires riding dinosaurs or something like that?
Yeah, well, if you're ninjas, for example, I was playing ninjas and wizards, and I had both. So I threw down. I didn't have them combined, but I'd throw down my shinobi ninja, which was 3 points toward the goal, and then a chrono mage, which was 3 points toward the goal, and they all had different rules that interacted with the cards. It's a real fast play game. It's got really nice art. There's one expansion called Awesome Level 9000, which probably tells you just how serious the game takes itself. And there's an upcoming game called There was an upcoming expansion called the Obligatory Cthulhu expansion.
Nice. These guys are very aware of what their niche is.
Yes. If you want to know more about it, the Will Wheaton's Tabletop video podcast has done an episode where they play it. You can find that on YouTube.
That's a great resource in general.
It is.
Everybody should probably be watching Tabletop.
And it's called, like I say, it's called Smash Up. It's by AEG Games, who are most known for the Legend of the Five Rings game.
Yeah. How long does it take to play?
It was quick. It's like 30 to 45 minutes.
Nice.
And yeah, a lot of fun. I just happened to get a chance to play it lately and highly recommend it. It's a relatively cheap investment, and when you get bored with it, buy an expansion and you're all set.
It sounds like a good, kind of silly, awesome game.
Yeah, it's not unlike, say, Munchkin or one of those. If you like, people who like beer and pretzels card games, this is the way to go. If you're a hardcore European strategy guy, you may not like this one. Moving on from games, though, this time we are going to talk about Before Watchmen, which just came out as a series of 4 hardcovers.
It's a controversial project.
It is.
It is. It really is.
It was.
Is it anymore? Nobody cares anymore.
No, nobody cares anymore.
It's done.
But like a year ago or whatever, when it was announced,
it was very controversial.
Somewhat predictable. Like the fans freaked. Some fans freaked out.
And Alan Moore freaked out.
And Alan Moore, who is pretty much known as a curmudgeon these days, was like, "They're strip mining my ideas again," and he said it just like that. I'm sure.
Of course.
But, the world of Watchmen is a pretty rich world, and even though he clearly told the big story...
Yeah, the story was told, but there's room for more stories.
Right, that never revealed was, we know that, say, Rorschach and Night Owl had a partnership together, and it's like, I have to admit, when I read that, I kind of wanted more when I read the original thing, and I was like, I wouldn't mind reading a comic about that. And the question for me when they announced this project was always... I was interested enough to read it, but would the writing be there?
Yeah, and the talent they lined up was impressive.
Oh, the talent is amazing.
So, a few, like Darwin Cook.
Darwin Cook, one of our favorite writer-artists.
Amanda Connor.
Amanda Connor, one of the best artists in comics, quite honestly.
Brian Azzarello of 100 Bullets fame.
Yep, a guy who sort of did Gritty, who made sense to give him comedian
he's a Vertigo
Rorschach.
guy.
And then JMS.
Who we mentioned in our last podcast is best known for Babylon 5, but done tons of comics.
He did Night Owl and Dr. Manhattan, which are two of the more straightforward superhero-y type guys, which is in his wheelhouse. They paired people well.
They really did.
They had Andy Kubert was doing the art.
And Joe Kubert was doing the inking over him as well.
And what were there, maybe 8 miniseries?
There were... More than that, actually, because there's...
A few of them were one-shots.
A couple one-shots, yeah.
And basically they collected them in hardcovers based on the creators. So, JMS, all of the 2 miniseries he wrote, and the Moloch one-shot, the bad guy Moloch.
Yeah.
They're all collected
in there. I don't know, do you want to talk about that one?
Azzarello as well, real quick. Azzarello's Rorschach and
comedian.
Yep.
And Darwin Cook wrote and co-wrote the Silk Spectre and the Minutemen, which is the main hero group from.
Yeah.
And then Len Wein, who was the original editor on the project, and you may know as the guy who co-created like Nightcrawler and Wolverine and all these characters. Mm-hmm. He wrote the Ozymandias, who is their sort of big brainy, as it turns out, bad guy. Spoilers for Watchmen, a 30-year-old comic.
Yeah. And then the pirate story,
which was
in the back of each comic.
Yeah, because pirate comics are really big in the Watchmen world because superheroes are a real thing.
Right. And I think overall it was like something of a mixed bag, but pretty readable stuff, and I enjoyed it. I've ended up picking up a few, and I think you did too.
I picked up several of them.
Randy's on the fence.
I am on the fence. I'll say this: the production is great. The hardcovers are really good. It looks really good. The variant covers in the back are almost enough to make me pick it up on my own because they had a ton of really good artists doing variants.
Honestly, I think you put Darwin Cook's name on it and his art in it. Yeah, I feel compelled to buy it anyways. I feel like
Minutemen was the strongest of the projects, but I don't think you guys would agree with that.
Minutemen, the one that Darwin Cook
wrote and drew.
You know, I there's stuff in it I really liked, and there's stuff in it a few twists and turns and reveals I wasn't wild about.
Yeah.
But overall, so his was, really fleshing out the original superhero team. Yeah. There's lots of stuff I liked in it, and I haven't read my hardcover of this one yet, although I purchased it. I'm looking forward to going back. I mean, it's honestly worth it probably for Darwin Cook's art alone.
Yes.
As I'm flipping through it, I see nudity, by the way.
Yeah, there's a lot of nudity in those two in particular.
You know, what's interesting is that Alan Moore, other than saying the S word in the original Watchmen, generally avoided any sort of R rating. It was like a hard PG-13 for content, maybe.
Sir, are you forgetting Dr. Manhattan's big blue dong?
You know what? It was flaccid. It's a different case.
And in fact, I know there was Silk Spectre nudity in the original Watchmen.
Yes. It's just, but sort of, it was kind of like the way, it was almost the way PG was in the 70s, though.
No, you're right.
And this, like, they're dropping the F-bomb all right and left in this. Yeah. So just a little word to the kids out there. It's not for the kids.
It's not for the kids.
It's weird. I would say the art in the Darwin Cook one is some of my favorite. But I honestly think the best one is the JMS. Which is weird because I know
the Night Owl, Dr. Manhattan.
The Night Owl and Dr. Manhattan stories.
Do you mean for like overall?
In terms of hardcover.
In terms of hardcover.
Like if you were going to buy one.
I was most happy with those stories because I liked sort of the exploration of those characters. And the way Dr. Manhattan's story is told is very interesting because it sort of looks at it...
It's non-linear in a way?
It's non-linear, but it's also a look at his life if he hadn't become Dr. Manhattan.
Right.
And that is a very interesting way to look at things.
There's some sort of weird time travel-y, butterfly effect-y stuff of like, well, if he perceives all time simultaneously... What would happen if he stopped the accident that made him Dr. Manhattan?
Yeah, they bring up Schrodinger's cat and things like that.
Right.
And then the Night Owl one, beautifully drawn, first off.
It's one of those ones that sort of mines a bit of history from Watchmen. There's a scene I always liked where Silk Spectre's in his apartment and she sees this autographed photo on one of his desks. There's a picture of like the silhouette, not the silhouette, whatever, the Night Lady or something like that, who's this sort of slightly fetish geared hot lady, villainous.
Yeah.
And it's like, thanks for the memories or with a little XXOO or whatever.
And JMS actually fleshes that out.
Well, what happens is Silk Spectre, she's like, who's that? What's the deal with this? And Night Owl is like, that's nothing. She was a troubled woman, and he kind of it's kind of an awkward moment, Well, this reveals what happened between them. It's sort of a major plot point, as is his early team up with Rorschach.
Yep.
And I kind of like what he did with it. It is one of the more straightforward ones. In some ways,
but
I might almost say it's too straightforward for the Watchmen verse.
Maybe, but it's poignant. I mean, its characters are really well done, and I love the ending. The ending is amazing.
So here's the thing. When I was first reading it, I remember the first issue I was like, I don't know if this is one I'll even continue to read.
Yeah.
It was only really when I read the whole thing that I decided I really liked it quite a bit. So it's just kind of interesting that way.
When I was on the fence, I was like, I'm not really that interested, and you kind of pushed me towards it, and I was like, and it ended up being my favorite. So
I don't think you've read the Moloch one-shot.
No, that's the one I have not read yet.
But it's an interesting one-shot that reveals the life and times of the evil magician who we know Ozymandias gave cancer to in order to fulfill his evil plan.
Spoilers.
And and it has some twists and turns on his life that are kind of interesting. And so, and an amazing art by Eduardo Rizzo, who's just always awesome.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's just a general, I recommend them all.
Well, the one we haven't talked about is the comedian, the one that Brian has the comedian Rorschach one, which is darker than the others, I would say.
The comedian one is...
Although, wouldn't you say the Darwin Cook one, pretty dark?
Oh, I mean, they're all dark, but Azraella by nature writes a sort of darker, crimier.
It's true. His stuff is a little edgier.
I mean, the transition that the comedian goes through from sort of a troubled jerk to a, sort of an anarchist,
right?
Is interesting to watch.
Well, you see these fleeting glimpses of, I guess I'd say, idealism in him early on.
They're just stomped out by what happens to him,
right? And it's interesting because Alan Moore didn't really show that in Watchmen, and so and weirdly, I think you mentioned this before, Randy. Azzarello really did have his voice really down.
Yeah.
And it's pretty grueling to watch to read. And
there's some great tie-ins with history. With him being close to the Kennedys was a really neat idea.
Yeah. They actually, because, it's vaguely or hinted at or maybe overtly hinted at in Watchmen that he was the guy who killed JFK.
Yeah.
And this kind of delves into that deeper and in a sort of more sophisticated way than you might expect. It's not just a yes or no. It's kind of this is interesting. He seems to have had a friendship with the Kennedy brothers.
Yep. Actually, I think you can go so far as to say they refute the notion that he killed Kennedy.
Yeah.
But they definitely imply that he was involved in a way.
Yes.
And I thought that was interesting.
With some other dirty deeds of that era, too.
Yep. Yeah.
And then he did the Rorschach one, which was kind of interesting because it had, I would say, very strong. It looked like 70s grindhouse art from Lee Bermejo.
Yeah.
But I was a little more disappointed in that one because, in a way, I kind of wanted what I think fans sort of want, which is I kind of want to see Rorschach kick some ass.
Yeah.
I know he's troubled and homophobic and this kind of, really a kind of pathetic guy underneath it all.
Yeah.
But he is also a memorable ass kicker in the storyline, and he kind of...
He kind of gets his ass kicked.
He kind of gets his ass kicked in
and the other thing I'll say, I think the biggest problem with Rorschach overall is that to some extent you want him to stay as mysterious as possible. You don't want to see beneath the mask of Rorschach.
Right.
And in Watchmen, you really don't. When you see it, you see, Rorschach's the person. The guy beneath the mask is really nobody.
Yeah.
And so the more you explore that, the more it sort of undermines that character's strength.
Right.
Not that it's a bad run or anything. It's probably just
I thought it was interesting, and I plan to pick that one up too. But yeah, that one, it was just, I guess I wanted something that Azzarello was not the guy to deliver.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. The art, of course, is really pretty amazing, and you feel like you've walked into the movie The Warriors.
Yeah.
It's like, it really captures that ugly 70s urban blight. I guess I'd broadly say I recommend trying it out if it sounds interesting to you. If you think it was a travesty from the get-go...
You're not going to like
it.
it.
You're not going to like it.
Go ahead and take a pass.
So we'll move on to TV and talk about another prologue to a well-beloved series, and that is the Sarah Connor Chronicles, which is a TV
now
show.
canceled show.
It only ran for 2 seasons.
Yep.
But it is all available on Amazon Instant Watch and also on DVD.
Yep. I randomly found the DVDs at a store the other day.
I think a lot of people didn't catch it, or maybe they watched an episode or two and weren't really impressed.
Yeah.
I know that when I saw the first episode of it, which y'all have been watching it recently, I have not rewatched it, and I actually never saw the second season.
Yeah.
But we were really pretty happy with it at the time, to the point where we even played in a role-playing game based on it.
That's true.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It was.
Well, I remember I was sort of not sure about Summer Glau's Terminator character. It's like they couldn't decide whether she was human or not human at first. I thought she was a little snarky, but as they went on, I realized, okay, wait a minute, that's just pilot adjustment, and it was actually perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm.
When I went back and rewatched, I didn't have those problems.
No, and they played with what her Terminator was, and sort of...
So in that first episode, as you mentioned on Facebook a few weeks ago, Nick, that it kind of hits a lot of greatest hits of the Terminator series in that...
Yeah, it does.
You will see Terminators protecting people, you will see Terminators hanging off the back of cars.
Yep. You will see time travel.
It's all pretty well done, but it did not grab me necessarily until they got to the time travel, their particular time travel hook at the end.
For me, I love that universe so much, and it was sort of an homage to what Cameron did, and you can tell that the people behind the scenes, they were in love with those movies, and they wanted to homage that themselves.
I think when I go back and watch it, I think I'm going to enjoy it more. It's just that first time, I actually didn't know that the show was going to be such a smart show.
Yeah.
In my mind, I was like, I just want to see John Connor and the Resistance fighting in a post-apocalyptic universe.
That's what we all thought we wanted to see.
Or I thought I wanted that.
Yeah.
I've occasionally heard, John Byrne, the comic creator guy, will quote, I think, Stan Lee, who said, never give the fans what they think they want.
Yeah.
Which is a pretty cool quote. I like it.
Yeah.
Stan was, such an innovator. It's like, we look back and we think he gave everybody what they want, but really, he was doing a bunch of different stuff.
Yeah.
And the show did not give me what I think I wanted. Instead, it actually gave me something better.
Yeah. And that's one thing I came to learn about the TV show as I watched it, is like, I thought going in, I'm like, I don't know if there's enough material, much less of the universe. I don't know if a modern day Sarah and John Connor on the run from a Terminator sounds like it's going to get old really fast. And instead, they had this stuff where the FBI was investigating her, and she was trying to stop the building of Skynet, and so they really did like, how did Skynet get built? And they're looking at a chess computer that was involved, and all this. There was a conspiracy element to the company that was building it. And
I love the bit with the chess computer stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember they were just coming up with interesting scenes throughout. Yeah. There was a scene, I think in season 1, that I don't even remember why it happened because I haven't seen it in a while. But there's like an inert Terminator, like in a room with like John or Sarah.
Yeah.
And I think they're like trying to get out. They don't want to actually activate it. I don't remember what this was. I just remember it being a really great tense scene. And they were always
they were in like a silo because the Terminators were hoarding the metal that they would make the endoskeletons
right. And
out
you realize that's like, the Terminators, it's kind of neat. Their process is not some small thing that they can do quickly. They actually have to gather their resources for the creation of Skynet. Yeah. And they end up thinking about it in really interesting ways that I had never thought of.
Yeah, and they also use the time travel elements. And I'm a little wary of time travel getting used like that, but they were very smart about it. The Terminators were using sleeper agents, and the Resistance was too, and they were sort of traveling back in different times. Right.
And you would see those glimpses of the future, but it wasn't a big anti-Terminator fight in the apocalypse.
Right. No.
Again, instead it was more interesting than that. There were these mysteries involved about, like, what the Terminators who had some POWs were doing, and it was clear that they had some sort of game plan, and it was really interesting stuff.
And it wasn't just the writing. Honestly, the writing is great, but it's the actors themselves. I mean, Lena Headey is
Sarah Connor. Again, at first my thought was, this isn't Lena Headey. She's all pretty.
Yeah.
But she really nailed the toughness. And of course, now that you've seen her play
Cersei
on Game of Thrones, and Mama on Judge Dredd, and any number of characters that she's played, you're like, oh, this is one of the great actresses in genre TV.
Yeah, it's weird. Some of the behind-the-scenes stuff on the DVDs that said that she'd never seen the Terminator movies, so she was actually going in cold to this role.
That's interesting.
So it was her own take.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And, they also, I remember they would bring up things, in the same way we saw in, like, say, Terminator 2, the Terminator learning about the real world.
Right.
Like, I remember, like, religion would intersect with it in an interesting way, or sexuality or whatever, and they always kind of surprised me by being a little bit smarter than I expected. And
well, making Summer Glau the Terminator, giving a female Terminator, was a very important move, and that got played with a lot, especially in Season 2.
And you also got I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was also going to say you got a really creepy Terminator in Cromartie.
Yeah.
Which I never can remember the guy's name who plays him.
I should have looked that up beforehand.
Yeah, he's amazing. And I know you were talking with you earlier and saying he was actually a really good comedian as well.
Yeah. He's on Raising Hope now. He's
not fantastic. In the Sarah Connor Chronicles.
No, not in the Sarah Connor. In the Sarah Connor Chronicles, he's creepy as hell.
He plays a great Terminator, yeah. And that's important because you had Arnold in the movies. You gotta have a notable Terminator,
right? But it's got to be kind of different.
Yeah.
Yep. And as I recall, again, haven't seen it in a bit, but it had pretty good suspenseful action sequences.
Yeah, it
does.
So I am looking forward to a revisit at some point. I'll probably go ahead and pick up the set that y'all have and revisit it. But yeah, definitely a recommendation.
Well, to close out this time, we're going to talk about one of our beloved pop cultural phenomenons, G.I. Joe, specifically. G.I. Joe Retaliation.
Honestly, I think this was...
So, G.I. Joe Retaliation is the sequel to the first G.I. Joe movie, which we had hopes for.
We either hated or didn't see, in my case.
Oh, that's right. You didn't see it.
I heard enough to stay away. It was not
if
my
I could somehow retroactively erase that movie from my memory, I would do that.
Yeah, I think that'd probably be a good
maybe I can talk to Dr. Mindbender.
So here's the kind of cool thing. The movie is a sequel, but it's one of those sequels that is written in such a way that it's basically a reboot.
It is.
Because I didn't see the first movie. I didn't need to see the first movie to enjoy this. And Nick dragged us to it.
I did.
Our will.
I did.
And we all wound up really enjoying it. Now, there's a lot of people on the web who think this is the stupidest movie ever made, and maybe it is. Maybe it's our Joe love, but I actually think this is a really... It's not like an amazing movie, but if you're a G.I. Joe fan, if you're a fan of the comics, there's a lot of great nods, and everybody plays pretty interesting versions of the characters.
I think it was probably... I would say it walks the line between the comic and the animated show.
Yeah.
So if you only ever knew the cartoon, obviously you're going to have a good time, too. But I felt like the first one was too much the cartoon, crazy sci-fi stuff, and this one was a little bit more down and dirty and a little bit more realistic within its context.
Military and covert ops in Michael Bay style realistic.
And honestly, I got to say, I watched the first 20 minutes because I just bought it today for reasons. There's bonus reasons which we'll talk about in just a second.
Yep.
Yes.
But The Rock is really the lead in it. He plays Roadblock, who in the comics was not really the leader guy.
No.
But for the movie, it's been rebuilt as that.
And that's
honestly,
fine.
He's very charming in the role.
Yeah.
He's a very good lead for this kind of movie.
They even say he's a gumbo chef, and I love that.
They that nod.
Which was from the comics.
It's from the comics.
Who plays... It is Scarlet, right? Or is it CoverGirl?
It's Lady J.
It's Lady J. Who plays Lady J?
They're not all the
Adriana
same,
Palicki?
Randy.
Adrienne Palicki, and she's great.
She is. She's really
there's
good.
that scene where she infiltrates in the evening ground, and she's gorgeous, and That's really fun.
And Ray
Park is still Snake Eyes, and the ninja fight is probably the most memorable. Even the people who didn't like the movie have to admit the ninja fight was cool.
Well, and that is actually a direct homage to, loosely an homage to the silent issue.
Yeah, the
famous
big thing
G.I. Joe
knows.
number 21, which was no dialogue whatsoever, an amazing infiltration of a Cobra base by Snake Eyes where he takes on all these ninjas.
In the movie, there's literally 11 plus minutes where no dialogue is spoken.
Yeah, it's all
awesome.
action.
And when I was, by the way, I only watched those first 20 minutes before the podcast, and I was like, oh, what if I only like the movie in the moment? Maybe it's stupid now.
Yeah.
And, maybe it is. But
sure.
I had a really good, I was like, nope, I like this, because in the first 5 minutes, I was like, there's a bunch of fun little scenes, good character bits.
Yep.
I just found it was kind of cleverer than the first one, or more charming or
they
something.
They also, they ditched their Destro, and they ditched their Cobra Commander. They had Joseph Gordon-Levitt playing a not Cobra Commander in the first one, and in this one,
weird call.
Cobra Commander was Cobra
of course,
Commander.
we all like Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Sure, yeah.
But he kind of didn't really get to be... He was just the wrong call for it.
Well, they ditched Destro in a way where he's not completely gone.
He's not gone, but they just didn't use him this one.
I imagine he'll probably show up in the third movie in a new, cooler way.
They put a focus on Cobra Commander as Cobra Commander, and he was badass and awesome.
He looks like the Cobra Commander He gives orders and terrifies people, and he's a good, awesome bad guy.
And they did a cool take on Firefly, one of the saboteur of Cobra.
Right, which was a pretty heavy overhaul. Then he's kind of like this bayou, badass assassin.
Yeah, it's a different take.
Ray Stevenson, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it fits. I mean, it
does.
When I see him, I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And they had him in the costume for a little while. So you could see
these movies don't show the same fidelity that, say, the Marvel movies do to the Marvel comics. They're this weird blend of the comics, the cartoons, and just made up movie stuff.
And whatever actors they got. Because,
but I think we've all seen G.I. Joe go through interpretations over the years, and maybe it's just a little easier to roll with it, because it didn't bug me, but
there are nods for the fans.
There's lots of
vehicles. And
it helps when you actually have people behind the scenes who actually love G.I. Joe.
Yeah.
And I know that the director, Jonathan Chu, has a huge fondness for it. And he's actually coming on for the third one, which is fantastic.
As you know, I think the thing that I liked most about it, surprisingly, because he was this was glimpsed in the first movie, but they didn't really do much with it. Zartan, the Cobra, shapeshifter, kind of disguise expert.
Yeah.
He has assumed the identity of the American president,
which
played by
Jonathan Pryce.
Jonathan Pryce, a well-known actor who's won what's the Tony Awards? And he camps it up as an awesome evil president.
Oh man, he chews scenery like nobody's business.
No, it's so
much
fantastic.
Fun.
Yeah, and basically what it is he instates Cobra as his personal guard. The American public doesn't know the name Cobra, and so. And he is a lot of time. He gets to be the sort of the big villain after Cobra Commander.
Yeah. And that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But there's a reason we all bought it this week, and that's because if you buy the Blu-ray, well, first of all, they had a Best Buy exclusive extended cut, which Nick and I both got, and Dave tried to.
Right. I was stupid, and I bought the wrong one, and apparently you need to buy the one with the red box, I believe, the red cover.
It's still blue, but
it's called the Extreme Action Cut, if I'm not mistaken.
And you'll get 15 minutes of extra footage.
Yeah.
In all cases,
no matter what you buy, you get personalized dog tags. Which you get to send away from them, just like you used to send away for whatever G.I. Joe figures, as Dave pointed out, the Manta Ray windsurfer.
It's a windsurfer, yes.
Sergeant Slaughter's vehicle.
What anti-terrorist team does not need a windsurfing thing with a machine gun stuck on it? I needed it.
The Navy SEALs use them all the time.
But you get to put your code name on it.
Yeah,
you get to put your code name on the dog tags.
It wasn't just your code name; you could put your real name, your rank,
honestly,
of course your blood type, which we all realized we don't know. Well, maybe
we all would have paid like $20 just for the dog tags.
Yep.
So
in 4 to 6 weeks, we will have awesome dog tags.
Yes, so that we will officially be inducted into the G.I. Joe team, and if anybody else does it, you are also in the G.I. Joe team, and you can go on missions with us.
So that about wraps it for us this time. We realized last time we need some kind of sign-off phrase, and we were thinking, well, we could all say "Go Rogue" or something like that, or "Rogue
on."
Rogue on. None of those were good. So we instead are going with a phrase from our childhoods: "Yo Joe."
Yo Joe.
Yo Joe.